A very warm welcome to the next in our series of at-home interviews with technology CEOs. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Pam Maynard, Chief Executive of the global IT solutions provider, Avanade. Pam, thank you for joining us today. I hope you're well.
Very well, thank you, Mike.
Pam, you were just 6 months into your role as CEO when the pandemic hit. How has it shaped your personal outlook and what have you learned about yourself?
A number of things, really, Mike. The first thing will be it's really important to embrace when that things can go wrong, and it's really important that you don't panic when they do. The impact of the global pandemic in terms of the human toll has really been brutal and tragic, and it created a lot of anxiety and uncertainty right up front as people were scrambling to move out of offices and start to work effectively remotely. And my first focus was absolutely on our people, on our employees, helping them to make that adjustment. And then the second thing was about our clients. What could we do to help our clients to adjust to remote working? Sitting at the top of an organization as the CEO is really important that people could see that I was remaining calm through the crisis, because of the negative impact of the ripple effect, if you like, of me panicking. I'd say the second thing was about the need to be creative and innovative in how you actually responded to the disruption. And then really looking at how we can adjust to running virtual events in a way that meant that the in-person wasn't so important. So we really pushed the boundary in terms of big virtual events, plus also more smaller, intimate team events, town halls, happy hours, yoga online, all sorts of different things as well. So, being agile, innovative, creative, and adapting was the second piece. The third piece for me personally was the importance of boundaries. Being a leader in a global organization, I used to use my plane time as time to think and reflect and plan. And all of a sudden that went out the window. And one of the side effects again of the pandemic is that, as you and I have talked and others have talked, it's very easy for the days to kind of run into each other and for you to lose sight of where your boundaries are. So I've had to be much more intentional and deliberate about planning the downtime, and then leading on to our people. It's also been very important to help them to understand the importance of health, safety, well-being, and for them also to have that emphasis, in terms of themselves. So those would be the sort of the key learnings, if you like, in terms of 6 months as CEO and responding to the global pandemic.
Thank you, Pam. From your conversations with other business leaders, what's keeping them up at night, and where are you advising them to focus and make their priorities?
There has been quite a lot that we've had to deal with in terms of global business or business leadership generally. Starting with the pandemic, and then more recently, the thinking about, as business leaders, how we needed to respond in the light of the killing of George Floyd and then the subsequent global unrest and social unrest, and expectations of business leaders and businesses actually helping to drive some systemic change in society as a result of all of that. And the leaders I've been talking to have been grappling with both. Starting with the pandemic, the conversations that really are across 5 key topics. Firstly, it's been about cost containment, which wouldn't surprise you, right? And how you contain and reduce operating costs, freeing up capital to actually start to invest in driving the changes that have become very apparent as needed as a result of the pandemic, right? One of those changes would be around the core of businesses and supply chains, and creating resilience in businesses and infrastructures, operational and technical infrastructures, and addressing the issues that the pandemic has shown up in the supply chain. So that would be the second one. The third one is around talent and talent agility. We were just talking about remote working. As businesses have moved their people to remote working, they need to make sure that they've got the right technologies that make their teams effective in terms of dealing with their own customers and providing their own products and services, but also at the same time balancing the health and safety and care and welfare needs. Customer care and operations. Again, what we've seen are that businesses are looking at it in the time of the pandemic, and then as they recover, how do they take care of their customers? How do they maintain that connection to their customers? How do they recapture customers as they're recovering from the pandemic and realizing they've lost customers to other businesses and competitors? And then what do they need to put in place in terms of customer service and remote customer service to attract new customers? And then the last one is around products and services. Again, you're sort of thinking about how do they need to adapt their product and service portfolio to be able to cope with future disruptions, as the pandemic has taught lessons, if you like, in terms of the opportunities to evolve the product and service portfolio. And then if I move to the response in the wake of George Floyd, first and foremost, and I can say this from my own personal perspective of being a leader and a leader of colour, is about creating an environment in the organisation that's safe for people to speak out and share their experiences. There is no substitute at this time for communication. And it's not just about talking about your intentions as a leader. It's putting yourself in a situation where you can listen and you can understand the experiences that your people are going through, and therefore take that forward in terms of a tangible set of actions. But first and foremost, it's about creating a comfortable, safe environment where people feel they can share those experiences, which then you and your leadership team can then respond to. So, that would be the other piece.
Thank you, Pam. And in part two, we're going to spend a lot more time discussing diversity and inclusion as a core topic. But before we finish part one, there's one topic I just wanted to touch on briefly. There's probably no doubt that employee and customer experiences has been transformed by this pandemic. What do you think the long-term impact will be?
There are a number of impacts. The first one I would start with is remote working, Mike. And as you talk to business leaders, but also analysts and industry influencers in terms of the technology industry, that trend and that expectation is very prevalent. IDC, for example, the industry analysts, talked about the fact that prior to the pandemic, probably around 15% of people were remote working. And more recently, Gartner have published their view, which talks about post-pandemic, where they're saying probably around 48% of employees remain as remote working. Right. So I actually do feel that aspect is going to remain. The second one is around talent and access to talent. One of the things that we talk about is access to talent will become borderless and boundaryless. We already work in a global organization, so we're very used to working as global teams. I think that it will be another opportunity from the pandemic, as we'll be able to access people with the right skills, regardless of the geographies that they live in. The third one as well is just that whole shift to online. Businesses had to respond and have had to respond to selling and providing their products online, and also their services, and shifting their employees to, instead of providing interactions in person, be able to provide those interactions in a compelling way that enables you to capture and retain customers online or over the phone.
And that brings to an end part one, but please do join us again for part two, where we'll be exploring strategic issues, including diversity and inclusion in the workplace.